The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
Good morning, staff and members. Please join me in a spirit of prayer. Holy One, giver of all good gifts, source of the love that gives us joy and that gives life meaning, source of the love that overwhelms us with sorrow when we lose someone dear to us, source of the love that burns within us for justice when our lives and the lives of our family, our community, and our neighbors aren't being treated with the honor and dignity we all deserve. We pause nearly 2 days after the shooting and death of Daunte Wright. We hold before you the cries and anguish of a mother who lost her son. We grieve together the loss of a young Black man at the hands of police when this young man had so much in front of him. We acknowledge the wounds and trauma of Black and brown communities that have been opened up yet again by Daunte's tragic death. And we pray for all across race and across our whole state who are desperate to create a new reality, one where everyone is valued, everyone has enough, where our streets are places of joy and life, where we all are included and have a part to play no matter what we look like or where we live, and we trust that this state is for us, that our neighbors are here for us, and we are here for our neighbors. We pray for strength for all who can imagine something better for our shared life and are working tirelessly to create it wherever they are doing their work. And finally, Holy One, we ask that you bless the members in this chamber with the grace, the vision, and the resolve to be among the leaders that the people of Minnesota so dearly need right now. Amen.
The chaplain for today is Representative Todd Lippert from District 20B, Northfield, Minnesota. Representative Lippert is also community minister at Mayflower United Church of Christ, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members, when the Chief Clerk calls the roll today to establish a quorum, please state your name, your location, and that you are present. Members using the remote voting technology, please also press the green or yes button to indicate that you are here. The clerk will take the roll.
Acom.
Acom, Minnetonka, present.
Acom, Minnetonka, present. Agbaje.
Agbaje, Minneapolis, present.
Agbaje, Minneapolis, present. Ackland.
Ackland, St. Paul, present.
Ackland, St. Paul, present. Albright. Albright, excused. Anderson.
Anderson, St. Paul, present.
Anderson, St. Paul, present. Backer.
Backer, Browns Valley, present.
Backer, Browns Valley, present. Barr. Bonner.
Bonner, Maple Grove, present.
Bonner, Maple Grove, present. Barr.
Barr, East Bethel, present.
Barr, East Bethel, present. Baker.
Baker, New London Spicer, present.
Baker, New London Spicer, present. Becker Finn.
Becker Finn, Roseville, present.
Becker Finn, Roseville, present. Bennett.
Bennett, St. Paul, present.
Bennett, St. Paul, present. Berg.
Berg, Rogers, present.
Berg, Rogers, present. Bernardi.
Bernardi, New Brighton, present.
Bernardi, New Brighton, present. Bierman.
Bierman, Apple Valley, present.
Bierman, Apple Valley, present. Bliss.
Bliss, Beltrami County, present.
Bliss, Beltrami County, present. Bow. Bow. Bolden.
Bolden, Rochester, present.
Bolden, Rochester, present. Burkle.
Burkle, Skagen Township, present.
Burkle, Skagen Township, present. Carlson.
Carlson, Bloomington, present.
Carlson, Bloomington, present. Christensen.
Christensen, Stillwater, present.
Christensen, Stillwater, present. Daniels.
Daniels, Faribault, present.
Daniels, Faribault, present. Dowd.
Present.
Dowd, St. Paul, present. Davids.
David, St. Paul, present.
David, St. Paul, present. Davney.
Davney, Minneapolis, present.
Davney, Minneapolis, present. Damath.
Damath, Cold Spring, present.
Damath, Cold Spring, present. Detmer.
Detmer, Forest Lake, present.
Detmer, Forest Lake, present. Drazkowski. Drazkowski. Eklund.
Eklund, St. Paul, present.
Eklund, St. Paul, present. Edelson.
Edelson, Edina, present.
Edelson, Edina, present. Elkins.
Elkins, Bloomington, present.
Elkins, Bloomington, present. Erickson.
Erickson, St. Paul, present.
Erickson, St. Paul, present. Feist.
Feist, Austin, present.
Feist, Austin, present. Fisher.
Fisher, St. Paul, present.
Fisher, St. Paul, present. Frankie.
Frankie, St. Paul Park, present.
Frankie, St. Paul Park, present. Franzen.
Branson, St. Paul, present.
Franzen, St. Paul, present. Frazier.
Frazier, New Hope, present.
Frazier, New Hope, present. Frederick.
Frederick, Mankato, present.
Frederick, Mankato, present. Freiberg.
Freiberg, Golden Valley, present.
Freiberg, Golden Valley, present. Garofalo.
Garofalo, present.
Garofalo, Farmington, present. Gomez.
Gomez, Minneapolis, present.
Gomez, Minneapolis, present. Green.
Green, Foston, present.
Green, Foston, present. Greenman.
Greenman, Minneapolis, present.
Greenman, Minneapolis, present. Grossel.
Grossel, Clearbrook, present.
Grossel, Clearbrook, present. Grunhagen. Excused. Haley.
Haley, Red Wing, present.
Haley, Red Wing, present. Hamilton.
Hamilton, Mountain Lake, present.
Hamilton, Mountain Lake, present. Hanson R.
Hanson R., Harmony, present.
Hanson R. Harmony, present. Hanson J.
Hanson J. Burnsville, present.
Hanson J. Burnsville, present. Hassan.
Hassan, Minneapolis, present.
Hassan, Minneapolis, present. Hausman.
Hausman, St. Paul, present.
Hausman, St. Paul, present. Heinrich.
Heinrich Anoka, present.
Heinrich Anoka, present. Heinzman.
Heinzman, Nisswa, present.
Heinzman, Nisswa, present. Her, St. Paul, present. Hertas.
Hertas, Greenfield, present.
Hertas, Greenfield, present. Hollins.
Holland, St. Paul, present.
Hollins, St. Paul, present. Hornstein.
Hornstein, Minneapolis, present.
Hornstein, Minneapolis, present. Howard.
Howard, Richfield, present.
Howard, Richfield, present. Hewitt.
Hewitt, St. Paul, present.
Hewitt, St. Paul, present. Igo.
Igo, St. Paul, present.
Igo, St. Paul, present. Johnson.
Johnson, State Office Building, present.
Johnson, St. Paul, present. Jordan.
Jordan, Minneapolis, present.
Jordan, Minneapolis, present. Jurgens.
Jurgens, Cottage Grove, present.
Jurgens, Cottage Grove, present. Keeler. Keeler, St. Paul, present. Keel.
Keel, Hammond Township, present.
Keel, Hammond Township, present. Cleavorn.
Cleveland, Plymouth, present.
Cleavorn, Plymouth, present. Kegel.
Kegel, Spring Lake Park, present.
Kegel, Spring Lake Park, present. Katiza-Watun.
Katiza-Watun, Eden Prairie, present.
Katiza-Watun, Eden Prairie, present. Cosnick.
Cosnick, Lakeville, present.
Cosnick, Lakeville, present. Creeshaw.
Creeshaw, Little Falls, present.
Creeshaw, Little Falls, present. Lee.
Lee, Plymouth, present.
Lee, Plymouth, present. Liebling.
Liebling, Rochester, present.
Liebling, Rochester, present. Lilly.
Lily, St. Paul, present.
Lilly, St. Paul, present. Lippert.
Lippert, Northfield, present.
Lippert, Northfield, present. Listlegard.
Listlegard, Yuma, present.
Listlegard, Uma, present. Long.
Long, Minneapolis, present.
Long, Minneapolis, present. Lucero.
Lucero, Wright County, present.
Lucero, Wright County, present. Lewick.
Lewick, St. Paul, present.
Lewick, St. Paul, present. Mariani, excused. Markwart.
Markwart, Dilworth, present.
Markwart, Dilworth, present. Mason.
Mason, Egan, present.
Mason, Egan, present. McDonald.
Donald Delano, present.
McDonald, Delano, present. Mecklin.
Mecklen, Sherburne County, present.
Mecklin, Sherburne County, present. Miller.
Miller, St. Paul, present.
Miller, St. Paul, present. Moeller.
Moeller, Shoreview, present.
Moeller, Shoreview, present. Moran. Moran. Morrison.
Moran, St. Paul, present.
Moran, St. Paul, present. Morrison.
Morrison, Deep Haven, present.
Morrison, Deep Haven, present. Mortensen.
Mortensen, St. Paul, present.
Mortensen, St. Paul, present. Mueller. Mueller, St. Paul, present. Munson.
Munson, Lincoln Township, present.
Munson, Lincoln Township, present. Murphy.
Murphy, Hermantown, present.
Murphy, Hermantown, present. Nash.
Nash, St. Paul, present.
Nash, St. Paul, present. Nelson M.
Nelson M., Brooklyn Park, present.
Nelson M. Brooklyn Park, present. Nelson N.
Nelson N., Clover Township, present.
Nelson N. Clover Township, present. New Brindley. New Brindley, St. Paul, present. Noor.
Minneapolis, present.
Noor, Minneapolis, present. Novotny.
Novotny, Elk River, present.
Novotny, Elk River, present. O'Driscoll.
O'Driscoll, St. Paul, present.
O'Driscoll, St. Paul, present. Olson B.
Olson B. Elmore, present.
Olson B. Elmore, present. Olson L.
Olson L. Duluth, present.
Olson L. Duluth, present. O'Neill.
O'Neill, Maple Lake, present.
O'Neill, Maple Lake, present. Pulowski.
Pulowski, Winona, present.
Pulowski, Winona, present. Petersburg.
Petersburg, Waseca, present.
Petersburg, Waseca, present. Farr.
Farr, LeSueur, present.
Farr, LeSueur, present. Pearson.
Pearson, Rochester, present.
Pearson, Rochester, present. Pinto.
Pinto, St. Paul, present.
Pinto, St. Paul, present. Poston.
Poston, Lakeshore, present.
Poston, Lakeshore, present. Pryor.
Pryor, Minnetonka, present.
Pryor, Minnetonka, present. Quam.
Quam, Byron, present.
Quam, Byron, present. Raleigh.
Raleigh, St. Paul, present.
Raleigh, St. Paul, present. Rasmussen. Rasmussen, St. Paul, present. Ryer.
Ryer, Egan, present.
Ryer, Egan, present. Richardson.
Mendota Heights, present.
Richardson, Mendota Heights, present. Robbins. Robbins, St. Paul, present. Sandell.
Sandell, Woodbury, present.
Sandell, Woodbury, present. Sandsted.
Sandsted, Hibbing, present.
Sandsted, Hibbing, present. Schumacher.
Schumacher, Laverne, present.
Schumacher, Laverne, present. Schultz.
Schultz, Duluth, present.
Schultz, Duluth, present. Scott.
Scott, Andover, present.
Scott, Andover, present. Stevenson.
Stevenson, St. Paul, present.
Stevenson, St. Paul, present. Sundin.
Sundin, St. Paul, present.
Sundin, St. Paul, present. Swazinski. Swazinski, St. Paul, present. Tice.
Tice, St. Cloud, present.
Tice, St. Cloud, present. Thompson.
Thompson, present.
Thompson, St. Paul, present. Torkelson.
Torkelson, Hanska, present.
Torkelson, Hanska, present. Erdahl. Erdahl, St. Paul, present. Vang. Vang. Waslowick.
Waslowick, White Bear Township, present.
Waslowick, White Bear Township, present. West.
West Blaine, present.
West Blaine, present. Winkler. Winkler, St. Paul, present. Wolgamott. Wolgamott, St. Paul, present. Zhang J.
Young J. Fridley, present.
Zhang J. Fridley, present. Zhang T.
Young T. Maplewood present.
Zhang T. Maplewood present. Joachim.
Joachim Hopkins present.
Joachim Hopkins present. Speaker Hartman. Speaker Hartman, St. Paul present. Drazkowski.
Dreskowski, Winona, present.
Drazkowski, Winona present. Vang.
Vang, Brooklyn Center, present.
Vang, Brooklyn Center present.
A quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 92nd Session, 2021, 36 days, St. Paul, Minnesota, Monday, April 12th, 2021.
If there is no objection, further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Comparison reports. A copy of this order of business is online. If there is no objection, the motions will prevail. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail, and the substitutions will be made. Reports of standing committees and divisions. A copy of this order of business is online. If there is no objection, the reports will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the reports are adopted. Second reading of House files.
Second reading House File number 1077.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 1079.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 1952.
Second reading. Second reading of Senate files.
Second reading Senate File number 524.
Second reading. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The chief clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction and first reading of House Files 2515 through 2519.
First reading, House files 2515 through 2519. Announcement by the Speaker.
Announcement by the Speaker. A message from the Senate has been received requesting concurrence by the House to amendments adopted by the Senate to the following House file, 820.
Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk and online. If there is no objection, we'll take action on these motions first. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail. Announcements. Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, DFL members, we will be caucusing approximately 15 minutes after session today. And for Rules Committee members, we will be convening about 5 minutes after session adjourns today. Madam Speaker, I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 10:30 a.m. Wednesday, April 14th, 2021.
Representative Winkler moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 10:30 a.m. Wednesday, April 14th, 2021. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Winkler moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. The House stands adjourned until 10:30 a.m. Wednesday, April 14th, 2021.